Robert Fisher. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery for 2 years, 4 months, and 5 days. I am a loving father of 4 children, and I am a peer recovery supporter at Hope Valley Recovery.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking some time and spending it with us. Could you start off by sharing a bit about your childhood?
I grew up in, I guess, what you would consider a low-class family. My dad was he was an alcoholic. He smoked weed. He was abusive towards me, not really towards my sisters. My mother gave me up for adoption when I was 3 years old. My dad ended up adopting me. It wasn't the worst childhood. I didn't really play sports, didn't get to, I didn't really have like a normal childhood. We didn't go stay at people's houses. My dad was kind of more of the children are for chores. So my stepmom, she was the one that worked. She was never there. He was the one at home all the time. I ended up leaving home when I enlisted in the Army when I was 17 and I left when I was 18. So.
Okay. And had you started to use alcohol or drugs at that time?
Ironically, I was afraid of my dad. So when I was 16, there was an incident where my dad was one of those people that would get in your face and poke you and spit in your face. And I ended up cussing him out. We fist fought. I drank my first beer with my dad. I did experiment with pot. I skipped school and smoked pot one day, and I was so afraid that he was gonna know that I really didn't enjoy it. He didn't catch on. That was kind of like the only time that I had ever done that. I did drink with him on the weekends at 16.
Okay.
So
a little bit of experimenting there then. So
yeah.
So what was life like once you went into the service?
So looking back at it now, I have never. Back then, I was not the person. I didn't like authority. I didn't like being told what to do. I did really good when I was in basic training. And then once I went to my permanent duty station, I was a small town kid from Ohio who discovered cocaine and girls and, tequila. So it really didn't end up so well for me.
Gotcha. So how did your disease progress then over the years?
So I had noticed that my use of cocaine and drinking had become a lot, and I quit and I justified it like, oh, I just smoke weed now. Back then, this was, early 2000s, there really wasn't like a lot of treatment unless you could afford to pay for it. And to be honest with you, I wasn't ready for anything like that anyway. So it got worse. Like I would do good for a little bit, then I'd start drinking again, or I'd smoke weed. I never really went much further than that. The really hard stuff back then scared me. And I think I kind of knew in the back of my head, like I had been around people that used meth and heroin, and I kind of thought that I knew I would like it too much, so I didn't really experiment with that until later in my 20s. And when I did, it was just all bad from there.
Okay.
I come to Ohio. That lasted about 2 months. I ended up getting in trouble here, put on probation. So then we had this great idea to run to Arizona because, will put me out west and I can't get in any trouble. I'll be fine. We get to Arizona and my pregnant girlfriend at the time decides to tell me, well, you can live with me and my mom, but I want to see other people, which I got really upset. So I ended up actually my first day in Arizona, I ended up homeless with just a pillowcase full of the stuff that I had. And I ended up I was hanging out with some other homeless people. I picked up drinking again, and I ended up at a Filiberto's restaurant with a gentleman that I'd never met before, and he kept like going behind the restaurant, and I was like, "What do you keep doing?" And he's like, "Man, I got some stuff that'll make you feel really good." And I was like, "You know what? I'm homeless. I have nothing else going on. I'm in a state where I'm what, give or take 3,000 miles from home." So I ended up shooting heroin for the first time, and I fell in love with it. And it was just all bad from there. Something about that life excited me, and don't get me wrong, I was never rich. I never made an obscene amount of money, but I went from having nothing to having money. I thought I had friends. And I think at that point, I just had a really wrong idea of what a man was. I did whatever I had to, in my mind, not saying that it's true. I was doing what I had to survive, and the normal life, the 9 to 5, didn't appeal to me. I don't know why. I just wanted something else, I thought. And next thing you know, I'm doing all kind of crazy stuff. And at that point, it wasn't even for the drugs, because I had stopped. And I don't know. I don't know if I was trying to impress anybody. I don't really know what the mindset was. It was different. And I was a young kid, who I never got to do anything, and now I'm off on my own. I'm doing whatever I want, whenever I want. Nobody's telling me what to do. And I think a big part of it is that I was an addict back then. I just didn't know it, and I was addicted to adrenaline as much as anything else. Yeah. I ended up somehow, I can't remember the exact specifics. I made a detective mad, and whenever I left my house, he was on me, and he would always tell me, I'm gonna get you one of these days. I know who you are. I know what you do. And of course, at that time, I'm young. I thought I was untouchable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I stupidly had stolen several cars and was riding around in one of them. And I go into this, my buddy calls me, I go into his house, I sold him some stuff, and I come out, and I had that feeling like something's not right. And I remember looking at the cop, and he was dressed he had on a Hawaiian shirt. There was 2 of them. They had the hood of this SUV popped, they're working on it. There's no grease on their hands. And I remember looking at him, and I lifted my shirt up, and I was like, "We got a problem?" And he's like, "Nah, man, we're good." And I go to get in the car, and I seen his reflection. I seen the badge come out and the gun, and I knew right there, that I had messed up. And I stupidly tried to run, and they had all the exits blocked. There was nowhere for me to go. They had me. I ended up getting hit with possession of 32 stolen cars, and I ended up going to prison for it. So
yeah, they were ready for you. So
oh yeah.
So when you entered then into the prison system, did anybody talk to you about your substance use disorder? Had that become identified? Anything at all?
No. It never even so I had a public defender at the time. And of course, I always lied to people no, I don't have a drug problem. You know what I mean? I don't know why I lied about it. I can't really remember. They never really asked me about it. And of course, I'm partly to blame for that, because back then I had this I don't care attitude. it never came up. I never brought it up. So they just end up sending me to prison. And
Okay. So you said 8 years in there. Was did you experience some trauma while in prison?
I seen things that probably most 19-year-olds don't ever. They probably go their life without seeing. And at first, being a small town kid from Ohio, I was scared to death. But then after a while, the crowd that I was hanging out with, they told me, you'll get used to it. And I did. The side of the things I seen didn't bother me. I didn't lose any sleep over it. And to be honest with you, when I got sent to prison, I was angry. It was everybody else's fault but mine. I had a chip on my shoulder. You know what I mean? Just everything that a 19-year-old kid shouldn't be at that time.
Right. So once you got out of prison, what'd you do?
Messed up again. I come out, I had this chip on my shoulder. I tried to do good for a little bit, but I wasn't ready to change.
Okay.
So my aunt's husband had a construction crew. I worked with him, and I did good for a month or two. Then I reconnected with my mother. My mom was into drinking and pills, and I had never really been around the pill scene. She gave me my first Percocet, which for somebody like me is very bad.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, she got scripts of them, and I sold them for her. I lived with her for a little bit. We fueled each other.
Mm-hmm.
It really wasn't the best, but I thought, I'm bonding with my mom,
Mm-hmm.
which it's not really bonding. You know what I mean? It's just, and then I started right back down the same path. I'm selling drugs. I'm doing drugs. I'm drinking every day. Not going to work. I didn't want to work. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It was just the same pattern all over.
Right. So, and then did you say that you earned another trip to prison?
I did. I stupidly got an armed robbery charge. They dropped it down to robbery. I got sentenced to 4 years, 11 months, and I got sent to a minimum security prison. Was there for about 2 months, got my security raised, and they sent me to Lebanon, which is a level 3/level 4 camp. And they made me do 4 years and 10 months and then released me on judicial release.
Okay. And what year was that?
That was 2000. I got out of there in the end of 2013, beginning of 2014.
Okay. And at that point in time, did you say, I want a different life? Sick of going to prison?
So I did. I was sitting there. I found out I was getting my judicial release. One of my buddies comes up and he's like, "Hey man, when you get out, I need you to do this and this for me." And I was like, "You know what, man? I'm done. I've been doing this shit my whole life. Sorry about the language, but at this time, I'm almost in my 30s, and I am in my 30s, and I have nothing except for what I'm getting released from prison with again." And it was just, enough was enough. But when I got out, I didn't know how to do anything else. I didn't know how to be any other way. And I tried, but they were half measures.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, I'm putting my all into this. I would try, and when something didn't go my way, I would give up and go right back to being the same person that I was.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to your substance use at that time?
It actually got worse.
Okay.
I went from doing, usually it would be one drug or the other.
Mm-hmm.
I went from doing that to I was now shooting heroin. I was speedballing all the time, heroin and meth. And it was like all day. Like I spent my day trying to figure out how to get more. I didn't care that I was homeless. I didn't care what I looked like. I guess for lack of better, like I wasn't suicidal, but I didn't really care about life. So it didn't really matter at that point.
Right. And how long did that existence go on for?
So it went on for about until 2018. I got caught. I was in Target and they said that I was stealing, which I wasn't, but I was in there high. I had a receipt for everything that I had, but I had heroin in my pocket. And when I was so high, I forgot about it. So when the cop asked me, he's like, "Can I search you?" Well, I'm only thinking about, you're saying I stole stuff. Well, I have the receipts. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this so I can be about my way. And he asked me to empty my pockets. And when I did, the heroin fell out. And he's like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we both know what that is." Like,
Right.
And he's like, "Well, is it for personal use?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I've been hooked on heroin for a while." And turn around, put your hands behind your back, got arrested. I went to court, pled guilty, ended up getting probation, but they knew, so I had a receiving stolen property charge that I didn't know that I had, but I was aware that it could be out there. I had taken some stuff to a pawn shop for a guy and I knew that it was stolen. So when I signed the deal for the probation, they hit me with the receiving stolen property and violated my probation, and they sent me to the STAR program. STAR's not really, I don't know if you know much about it. It's not really rehab as so much behavioral modification. I did really good in there. I got out. I ended up going to a sober living in Lancaster called Lutheran Social Services. I ended up working for them. I did good for a year, and I don't know what happened. Next thing I know, like right about the year mark, I'm in the bathroom shooting heroin again, and my probation officer calls me. He's like, "Hey, I need you to come in and take a random drug test." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's not gonna happen. Like, I'm cool." So I ended up on the run again. I lost everything that I had. I ran for about 3 months, and I ended up getting an abscess on my arm, and I knew I had warrants. I couldn't go to the hospital. I let somebody use my car that was in my name stupidly, and when he used it, the cops ran, I don't know what he did. I was at his house, and they ran the tags and followed him back and ended up busting me. They sent me to the hospital. I had emergency surgery, and stupidly, unknown to me, my PO medically OR'd me. And of course, I didn't know that because I was under anesthesia for the surgery. So when I come out, the cop wasn't there anymore. And I asked my girlfriend, like, "Where'd that cop go?" She's like, "I don't know. He just left." So I ran from the hospital and ended up even more trouble.
So at what point did you decide, I want to do something different, or did they decide you were going to do something different?
In Fairfield County Jail, they have these kiosks, and you get visits on them, and you can message your PO. And so they caught me again after that, and I was sitting in there, and I hadn't heard from him in 2 weeks. So I just messaged him like, "Hey man, what's up? Am I on my way back to prison, or what are we doing here?" And he said, "You got two choices, prison or PARS, you pick." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I know what prison's all about. Like, didn't really work for me." So I'm like, let's try this PARS thing. So he ended up sending me to PARS.
And what is PARS?
It's a Pickaway Area Recovery Services. It's a recovery place here in Circleville, but they have a building in Washington Courthouse in Zanesville. They sent me to Zanesville. And of course, for the first, I think 2 weeks, maybe a little longer, I was like, no, I don't want to be here. I'm just here because I don't want to go to prison. And it was more along the lines, I didn't like being told what to do. And I don't know, some of the stuff started to stick, like, oh, reading in the big book, yeah, that sounds like me. So the information started to sink in, and I started to realize, like, I do have a problem. I had to change my perception of everything. Like, my life had shown me that I couldn't trust people, but that was because that was the life that I chose. Like, the people that I was hanging around, the friends that I thought I had. So now, like, I don't associate with people like that. I don't go around them. I keep my circle really small. I stick pretty much to my family. I use video games a lot. If I'm at home playing video games, I'm not out getting in trouble. I use meetings a lot to do that. My work. So I'm a peer recovery supporter for Hope Valley. I actually owe that to my peer supporter. She was my peer supporter at PARS. When I got there, I was really rough around the edges. I still broke rules because, to me, even though they were small rules, I didn't see it as, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this isn't relevant, you know what I mean?
Right.
And she actually kept them from kicking me out. And I made huge changes. I took people's suggestions, I started doing all the stuff they required me to do. And I'm sitting at home one day, and she said, there's this new place that's getting ready to open. I think you would be a really good peer supporter. You should interview with them. And I was like, okay, and I remember walking in, and my boss that did my interview, he has, like, no tattoos, no nothing. And of course, I'm in a short sleeve shirt like this, and I'm like, oh man, this isn't going to go well. But I actually got the job. I share my story with my clients, and it helps. It's amazing. Like, working in the recovery field is awesome. For all the wrong that I've done in my life and the lives that I probably helped destroy, I know what I'm doing now doesn't make up for that, but it helps to see people that were like me, that think that they can't change, to help them know that, like, everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a good life.
Absolutely.
Working in the recovery field, when you help somebody who's the same way that you were, experiencing those things that I just said is one thing, but when you get to watch somebody who's never got that opportunity before experience what it's like to accomplish their goals, it's awesome. Like, there's no greater feeling in the world.
Absolutely. What have you learned from your addiction?
A lot. But what I've learned is that it doesn't matter who you are. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care about, age, sex, anything like that. Like, if you have a problem, you got to get help.
For somebody who's out there struggling, what are some words of hope that you could share?
Recovery is possible. We can get better. We don't have to be our past. We don't have to be our mistakes. It's not set in stone. Your future is not set in stone. You can change it at any time. You just got to want it.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be able to share your story and your experience, and really the hope that runs through you. It's really beautiful. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.